Good morning and welcome to the post-launch news conference for Space Shuttle Discovery's STS-128 mission to the International Space Station. Joining us here today to discuss the launch is the Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Bill Gerstenmaier, Space Shuttle Launch Integration Manager and Chairman of the Mission Management Team, Mike Moses.
Morning.
And STS-128 Launch Director, Pete Nikolenko.
Good morning.
We'll start with opening remarks and then take questions. Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. I can't say thanks enough to the wonderful team here at Kennedy that got this vehicle ready to go fly. They've just done a phenomenal job. The teams did a great job of working the issues and having a pre-planned procedure for the valve in case it was needed, and they just did a great job working all that. The early images from what we've seen, the lighting is pretty good with the solid rocket boosters. As we go uphill, we got to see a pretty good look at the tank. We didn't see anything really abnormal. In fact, I didn't see any foam loss. We'll really know better tonight when we get the images down from the umbilical well, where we'll get a chance to see what the tank really looks like. But again, the tank appeared to perform extremely well. We didn't see anything like we did on the last tank, and that's what we expected based on the amount of testing and analysis we did before we went to fly. So again, I can't thank enough to the Kennedy team that got us here and got us to this launch date. They've just done a phenomenal job of hanging in there, getting us ready to go. It's tough with the weather. It's tough with things that come with us, but the team is really resilient. They just hang in there. They just keep moving steadily forward, and they just did a great job. Now we turn it over to the station team and the crew on orbit. They've got a very busy mission in front of them. This will be an exciting time on space station. They'll be preparing for some science and research. The new research racks that will be installed on station will be pretty exciting, bringing back the ammonia tank. That'll be a big activity for us to get that back to reconfigure the tank so it can be used later when the shuttle retires. So again, still a pretty busy mission in front of us with 3 pretty demanding EVAs, a pretty busy timeline. It's also a very interesting time in terms of space station. And while we were in the middle of the count here, kind of getting ready, yesterday I went to Houston and did a flight readiness review for the HTV vehicle in Japan. It's fully ready. The teams are ready for that HTV launch coming September 10th. So right after this mission ends, there's another one coming. There'll be some preparations done during this mission to prepare for the HTV, some arm activities towards the end. And I'm looking forward to a great period here on Space Station, and the Kennedy team really got us there with the first step, and I'm looking forward to the ISS team continuing that same pace, the same excitement as we move forward. So again, thank you. Mike?
Thanks, Bill. Let's see, I'll join Bill in saying the congratulations to the team and starting off here with the KSC processing team. They did an amazing job. We go back, it's hard to remember that back, it was Monday, I think we were trying this, and even before that we had the SRB APU problem out on the pad that we changed out. It seemed like there was a couple weeks right after we got on the pad that there was always something new, and the team did a great job of keeping our schedule and keeping the work in front of us moving along. And so hats off to them for getting us to the launch pad. And then today we met with the mission management team a little earlier before we got on console. A little atypical, but we had some issues to resolve with this inboard fill and drain valve problem that we saw previously, and I'm unbelievably proud of that team as well. Yesterday we met, and it was we kind of knew going into the meeting that we weren't going to be ready to launch, and it just wasn't going to be the right thing to do. We needed to give the teams just a little bit more time, and the difference in the story we had today was amazing. They came into the MMT with a nice integrated package. We talked all about the possible consequences, the possible outcomes, and it turns out you could say, if you want to be pessimistic, that was all for naught because the valve worked just like it was supposed to, but it really shows the preparedness of the team to be ready for that contingency, that unexpected event, and that unknown. So we had a good procedure had we needed it. Turns out we didn't need it, and that's a good thing. So we got the fill and drain system figured out, the tank loaded up, and then we just kind of sat and waited on the weather. Pete did a good job of threading the needle to be able to tank through bad weather, and then the launch weather didn't look the greatest when I came on console. In fact, I had to have the windshield wipers on as I was driving in, but it cleared out on us pretty good, and we talked, you talked to Kathy, I think, about every 15 minutes there, and I think all the hot air from all the talking we did blew all the clouds away, so we got in good shape. So, I'll take it. At the end of the day, we looked like we were in good shape. So as Bill said, now we move to the next phase, which is just as challenging as launch, if not more, with the on-orbit operations. A big day tomorrow with the Flight Day 2 inspections. We'll pull out the arm. We'll take a look at everything that's going on with the orbiter. Make sure the TPS is in good shape, the thermal protection system is in good shape. And then the following day on Sunday will be rendezvous day. And that'll start the big station mission with all the resupply, the logistics transfers, the science transfers, and then the EVAs. So it'll be an exciting and a challenging mission, and look forward to getting to it. So, Pete?
Well, thanks, Mike. Well, I am really proud of our processing and launch teams. They did an outstanding job just getting us to this point. Since yesterday, we had a really good, smooth turnaround. We did end up extending that rotating service structure, getting the thruster Tyvek covers changed out, and get ourselves into posture to be ready to go launch today. As Mike mentioned, this afternoon we had some challenges with some potential local area weather, but fortunately the storm cells did keep away from us long enough to get into tanking just about on time, only about 10 minutes late, which was outstanding. Then as we got through the tanking phase, we did have that great inboard fill and drain valve that cooperated, and that's all good. Really coming into throughout the day, except for weather, we really had no serious technical issues to talk about, which was outstanding. We did have that liquid hydrogen T0 umbilical ice, like what we saw in the first launch, the other launch attempt earlier in the week, but we'd already dispositioned that, and that was no issue. And then later on, about an hour prior to launch, we had some discussion about a fuel cell exit temperature that had just a very temporary exceedance of about 0.15 degrees, and that is allowable during the fuel cell load adjustment. So per the launch commit criteria, there was no issue there. So we had a really clean launch countdown, and thankfully, as Mike mentioned, the weather did cooperate. We were watching anvil clouds to our south and southwest for quite a while, and there was some local area weather in the late afternoon and early evening time frame, but fortunately it all cleared away and we had good weather and really clean launch countdown and a beautiful and spectacular launch. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll now take questions here at Kennedy Space Center, followed by a caller we have on our phone bridge. Remember to wait for the microphone, state your name and affiliation, and if possible, who your question is directed toward. Mike.
Mike Schneider, Associated Press. I was just wondering, how much longer will it take to get radar data and I guess other data on, because it was a night launch as opposed to, say, what you would have gotten on during a daylight launch? I mean, will there be a little bit more of a lag?
No, the timelines for processing all that are the same regardless. The radar data gets a quick look later tonight, and then a more thorough look. It would probably be about 12 hours after that, so about dawn tomorrow. And then the final report out will be on Flight Day 3, which will be Sunday, on the radar data. The ET handheld, I'm sorry, not the ET handheld, the ET umbilical digital photos that are the cameras down in the umbilical wells with the flash, those will be downlinked tonight before the crew goes to bed, just like normal. And so we'll have that data all on the ground. The piece that we won't have because it's a night launch is the handheld video, where after MECO, the crew would normally pitch up and around and point their overboard windows, overhead windows, back at the external tank and take pictures with a camera and a video. We're not going to do that because it's dark, so we won't have that imagery. So that's really all we're going to miss. Everything else is going to come in on the normal timeline.
Go ahead.
Pat Duggins, National Public Radio and WMFE for Mike. The adjusted procedures regarding the fill and drain valve sensor, is that now gospel for the remaining shuttle missions, or are you going to revert back to the rules prior to Tuesday?
We're going to go talk about that. The language we wrote today was really plagiarized effectively from the way the LCC used to be written back in 2004 before we had the failure that made us kind of change the LCC to protect for that. I think what we learned in all the research we did was we have the LCC's there to protect you from the condition that would cause the valve to break and bind and you now be in an unsafe configuration to drain. We have plenty of screening procedures in place prior to that point that tell us we are not one valve cycle away from that failure. So I think that particular part of the LCC we will probably adjust to say we can do something like this to go confirm positive cues. We're going to kind of wait on that too till we do the failure analysis on the valve and see what's in there and what really was the cause. If it is something that is a systemic problem that we just hadn't seen before, we will probably try to protect for it. If it looks like it was a one-time event, we'll probably not worry about it, and we'll keep this as a hip pocket procedure.
Jim Siegel, the Celebration Independent newspaper. What did the crew do during the last couple of days while they were waiting for all of this to be resolved? What kinds of activities did they go through? Was it anything unusual? Did they go through the same thing kind of over and over again that they did for in preparation for the first day? How does that work?
Let's see, they really kind of do have a kind of a routine that they follow. When they come down prior to a launch, they're here for a few days, and there's a set of training that they get themselves ready for leading up to kind of peak right at launch time. The flight deck crew practices landings in the shuttle training aircraft, both daytime and night approaches. As we delayed, we were normally going to be a night landing at the end of the mission, and so the crew was mostly focusing on those night landing approaches. Now that we've delayed enough, we're going to be transitioning to a daylight landing, and so the crew switched over and practiced a few of those. It was actually a pretty funny story. The head of FCOD, the Flight Crew Operations Directorate, said at the MMT today when I was asking about the crew readiness, he said, you wouldn't think you normally need to practice landing in the daytime, but in the daytime you see the trees at the end of the runway, and at night you don't see them. And so it's worth doing that again just to refresh your memory that there are trees right there. And so they do that kind of thing, and so they just basically stayed on a schedule that kept them fresh. The rest of the crew studies and practices and kind of back in Houston, they would be doing integrated simulations with their training team. Here, they kind of do them on their own desktop. They flip through their procedures, walk through what they would do, kind of choreograph. And then they do have a little bit of downtime. I think it's actually probably required that they at least watch Groundhog Day, the movie, once or twice while we've scrubbed a couple times. So I'm sure they did that. Yeah.
Jay.
Jay Barbary with NBC. For all of you, STS-129 is next, I believe, on November 12th. And the next one, is it not until February? Where are we on the manifest? I know you want to get all 4 next year if you can, and this is 4 today, so if we get STS-129, we got 5 this year. You want to get at least 4 next year. Could you run us through it, where we are, Gerst?
Yeah, I can't remember the February launch date.
Yeah, I don't know, it's in February, and it will stay in February because there's a beta cutout, the sun constraint that kind of keeps it in February. We're thinking about for the November flight, it's currently scheduled for the 12th. We're looking to see if maybe we might be able to go to the 9th, so we may actually move it up a little bit. That helps us with an overall manifest balancing. We'll see if the teams think that's the right thing to do. We'll look at it with the teams and see if things make sense or not. But it looks like we're on track for November, and then we wait till February, and then we pick up with the remaining flights next year.
So you have to do 6 next
Jay, hold on. Just wait for the microphone.
Yeah, we need to do 6 flights next year. Next fiscal year. 5 flights in the calendar year. But yes.
Kim Spilrud with the Norwegian Romfart magazine for Mike. The PV12 valve worked just perfectly today, and also during the tests earlier in the week. Will it remain an unexplained anomaly, or will you do some sort of tests when you get Discovery back on the ground?
Yeah, we will pull this valve out and go test it and look. The visual inspection is probably the best thing, and hopefully we'll see something there. If not, the teams will talk about the benefit of running that valve at a cryo conditions in our cryo lab down in Cape Canaveral and seeing how it performs in cryo conditions. The indication today, it worked good at cryo temperatures before. It worked good at ambient conditions. It didn't work once under cryo conditions. That says it's probably some intermittent condition, and again, I'm going to speculate a failure mode, but we don't have any reason to believe that's the one. But you could just have in that micro switch a little bit of wiring that's just pulling itself a little tight as it contracts in cryo and just breaks contact, and then it comes right back again. Something like that would be very hard to find in failure analysis. So we'll pull it apart and look, and it might end up as an unexplained anomaly.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com for Mike or Bill or whoever wants to take it. Given that Discovery will be in orbit for its 25th anniversary, it gives a chance to look back at its lifespan. And I know it's coming to the end of its planned usage with the rest of the shuttle, but after 37 flights, are valve glitches a sign that it's showing its age, or where is it on its potential lifespan versus its planned lifespan?
Let's see. It's the planned lifespan was a 100 mission type scenario, and so we're in pretty good shape. The valve glitch we saw, these valves are changed every 16 flights, so it's not any kind of original build equipment. We have been seeing some failures in the fleet that look like they might be age related. Particularly, we talked earlier before lunch about the power connector assembly failure that looks like that might be an age cycle failure. We don't time, more life than the stuff we fly. And so that's what we count on to help give us those indicators of age of life, end of life type failures. And we really haven't seen too many, but we do need to make sure we pay very close attention to it. As far as the condition of Discovery and how she's doing, I was reading some stuff and on the internet, and somebody had said something about the orbiters must be corroded like old lawn chairs sitting down here in the salt air. You go look at the inside of an orbiter, and you cannot tell the difference from when it probably rolled out of the factory. It is unbelievably pristine. The Corapon coating, the corrosion control systems, the wiring. I mean, it looks brand new. It looks better than brand new. The teams down here do a very good job of keeping that vehicle in very good shape. And so, Discovery's ready to go for another 30 or 60 missions. I have no doubt.
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com. Just first of all, congratulations to you and all the teams for working through this pad flow and getting us to today. Just a couple of quick ones. One, the LH2 umbilical ice buildup, is that similar to the buildups that you've seen on the couple previous missions? And any leading theories as to what it is, or any things you might go install at the pad to sort of inhibit this? And also, can you walk me through the fuel cell temperature thing that you saw today as well? Thank you.
Well, I'll take the fuel cell one. Right before, about 10 minutes or so prior to launch, we do a fuel cell load adjustment where we basically, it's exceedance of 0.15 degrees for 2 seconds. The limit's 160 degrees. They saw 160.15 for just 2 seconds. And there is a provision written in the launch commit criteria that provides for a temporary exceedance if you're in the process of performing that load cell adjustment. But because by the letter of the law, we had temporarily exceeded the limit on that particular launch commit criteria, he was required to report that to the team. And since we realized and understood by the rules that we had that provision that allowed for us to live with it, we discussed as a team, agreed that yea verily that was the right and prudent course of action, and that the limit had come back within the specifications and within the what else we measure, the KOH concentration on the fuel cells as well. It was well within that limit, so that other parameter was acceptable as well. So we were good to go, and it was just one of those cases that we discuss it for a few minutes and make sure that we were right and that there was no issue.
And let's see, on the LH2 umbilical problem, that is similar to the problem we've been seeing. That umbilical is somehow probably moisture is just condensing around there and forming some ice. Locally, we've had this now for a couple of flights. And we've been troubleshooting it. The KSC team's been slowly working on it. One of the things we used to have down here a test rig called the LATF, the Launch Engineering Test Facility, which basically simulated all the hardware we have out on the pad. We don't have that facility available to us anymore. We decommissioned it a while back. So we kind of do our testing on the vehicle or on the T0 umbilicals after we've launched. So they've looked at the seal and the gap that it creates. We found a few gaps that they've tried to dress up and make sure we don't have. That's helped the problem a little, but the ice is still forming. They now looked at it, and they think that on the inside of the valve, or inside of that umbilical plate, there's a few places where the internal seals probably could be tightened up a little bit. One of the things we want to be careful, though, we don't just go changing it, because you really, that seal's there, it's meant to bleed and let pressure out. You don't want to put a pressure on that now forces hazardous gas back into the orbiter. You need to let it come out of the orbiter. So you don't want the pressure against that plate to be too high. So it is kind of a delicate trade, and we don't want to just go willy-nilly change everything. So they've been looking at it. We've been talking a lot about what's been happening. Again, this is probably one of those age of things that the seals are just getting a little less compliant. They're not highly used, but they're not brand new anymore, and so they might just be losing some of their compliance, and we need to take a look at it. So we've had a long ongoing test program here and an engineering program to try to solve it. We just quite haven't gotten there yet. We're kind of taking our time with it.
Is the ice on the umbilical or on this, or up against the orbiter T0 plate?
It's both. It forms on the umbilical, and then it bridges across, and it forms on the side of the orbiter. I don't know if we have any of the pictures, or if we're going to release any of them, but you get, I think this one was like a 4.5 inch long by, was it like 2.5 inches?
1.5 inch.
1.5 inch wide and about a 1/4 inch thick was the ice that was on the side of the orbiter on the thermal protection system, and then it kind of bridged up, and on the metal of the umbilical plate there was a strip of ice as well. That ice we're not worried about. That comes off with the umbilical plate. It's the stuff that's on the orbiter TPS that might stick and stay while we lift off and then come off later and hurt us that we're worried about. And we looked at this one, looked at the debris transport and the damage possibilities, and it was all within family and within our tolerances. Very, very low likelihood of release, very low likelihood that it would translate and hit something of critical parts on the orbiter.
Thanks. We'll take one question here, Kennedy, and then we're going to go to our phone bridge. James?
James Dean from Florida Today for Mr. Moses or Garcia-Meyer. There's quite a bit of analysis done of Discovery's tank in the past weeks up until the point that it was even already out on the pad. And I'm just wondering if you could talk about that effort. To what extent was there any, apprehension during liftoff as you watched and looked to see if some of those same problems repeated? And are any of those processes like the plug pulls and X-rays and stuff going to become standard on later flights?
You want to?
Yeah, I can do a piece of that. I don't think there was really any apprehension associated with the launch. We really thoroughly understood this tank. We did all the plug pulls and all the critical areas that we needed to assure ourselves that it was going to perform. It's good seeing the visuals that confirms that the plug pulls showed us exactly what they were. We didn't see anything off nominal. We'll get much better pictures when we see the umbilical well pictures tonight and see if there's anything else that looks strange to us. So I don't think there's anything that we're really worried about. We did a good job of analyzing the one ice frost ramp up on the LO2. We've got both terahertz and backscatter X-ray, so we'll be interested in seeing if anything's going on there with that ice frost ramp. We changed the plus X maneuver to be a little bit longer, so the orbiter would be a little bit more forward on the tank faster before the tank falls away from the shuttle, so we could actually get better pictures of those ice frost ramps up on the LO2 side. So we'll get better images from those pictures. We'll take a look at them. It'll be data that'll help us understand what we've got. But I think the teams again did a great job of figuring out what needed to be done, making sure that it was done right, and then I will get to see how it actually performs in flight. And if something changes a little bit, then we may change what we do in terms of testing and processing. But we kind of test a little bit and then fly a little bit and then learn and then mod the way we need to go mod. So I think that all went well. In terms of future processing, Mike can address. I think we're still trying to decide exactly what we want to do in the intertank region. We still may want to do some more plug pulls. We'll figure out the right time to go do that. We've already done the terahertz and backscatter X-ray of all the ice frost ramps. I think those have been done.
Backscatter is going to be next week.
Next week. So we'll get all that data for the next tank. So I think those will be kind of standard processes to help us keep learning about the tanks. And Mike, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We kind of have that as some open actions. We start stacking SRBs on the launch platform for 129. We're ready to start now. We kind of held off a little bit just to make sure we were going to launch here, and so they'll get picked right back up in there. And so we have a couple weeks before we stack the SRBs and bring the external tank out of the checkout cell, and we'll decide on our plug pull plan and our imagery plans before then. So we do plan to do some more investigation, more than probably a normal flow on this tank, and then we'll kind of look and see how that performs to decide how much we need to keep doing.
Thanks. We'll take a question from our caller on our phone bridge. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Tariq Malik from Space.com and Space News. I appreciate you taking the question. And my question is for Bill or Mike. I was just curious that if there's a feeling of vindication on your team at all, having capped the week with tonight's night launch after the shuttle delays this week, and then there were other malfunctions with NASA spacecraft headed for the moon and around Mars. If you can give me a feeling of how your team is feeling, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we take these things kind of one day at a time and just kind of move forward. I don't see it's a tribute to the team that they've got the focus to just keep moving forward. So when we have something that doesn't work exactly right, and then like the valve, we wanted to have a pre-planned procedure ready to run in case this limit switch didn't do the right thing. We took the time to go work that, and that's a tribute to the team. Is that you don't anticipate something, you don't work things too hard. You just kind of stay in this continuous learning mode. You just kind of take each event as the way they come to you, and we don't look too much broader other than the other activities we see on station. We know the work the station team has got to do. We know what they've got to do before HTV. So we work to make sure that as a total team within the station and shuttle teams, we're all ready to go support the mission. So I think the teams have done a great job of just working through the challenges that come forward, and it always feels good when all that hard work actually comes to the fruition and you get to see a good launch like today. So there is a sense of accomplishment that all your work went well, but sometimes you don't get rewarded even by good work. But the teams have done a great job here, and it felt good to launch, but not especially great in the big scheme of things.
Okay. Come back here, Kennedy Space Center, Todd.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Gerst and anybody else who wants to field it. The Augustine panel is delivering their report to the White House this weekend. Of course, among the options that still are on the table are extending the International Space Station operations through 2020 and extending shuttle operations through 2015. And I'm wondering what you think of the wisdom of either of those options, especially on shuttle extension, given the former NASA administrator's stance on that particular item.
Yeah, I think the report's going to be a little bit longer in coming, at least what we hear. We may see it maybe in the middle of September, so we may not see the report as early as you said. And I think we're going to wait a little bit until we get the report and then actually read through it, see what the commission says. We all heard their hearing, their public hearing, and we kind of know where their initial leanings were, but I'm kind of one that always wants to wait until I actually see the document and the way it's written and how they actually phrase some of their discussion. We'll see what they say. We're starting to think about it. We're starting to ask those same kind of questions that you just asked me. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? What fits within the budget? What's inspiring? What things do we think they're going to tell us that might help us? So we're starting to sort through those things, but we haven't really formulated a position yet. We're not really sure exactly which way we want to go, but I think we want to wait till we get the report and then be kind of measured about how we proceed forward and figure out the plan that takes the best advantages of the assets we've got in front of us.
Mikhail Sladovnikov with Russian television. Just to follow up, and that is a question for all of you. If you would see that realistic, the extending of a shuttle mission, for how long it could serve, you stated that the equipment in great shape. Thank you.
Let's see, I think from a part standpoint, we only have enough external tanks built to be able to add one extra flight for our launch on need mission. So right now our manifest is pretty limited in terms of our capability to extend. We'd have to restart production lines, recertify vendors, bring those things back online. It's not impossible to do it. It just takes time and money and effort to do that. So from that standpoint, we're not really set up to do that. In fact, we're going the opposite direction, and that is phasing out and turning down our workforce and heading towards a retirement. So we'd need to just switch directions with that if we get a new direction. So from a practical standpoint, it's hard to do because we haven't been doing that, preparing for an extension.
James Dean from Florida Today. Mr. Gerstenmaier mentioned a busy time coming up in the station. Also, though, here at KSC, you'll be starting to stack another shuttle soon, and that'll be right next to the test rocket for Constellation, of course, that it's hoped will fly in the fall. And just wondered if you could comment on what's going on down here on the ground here and just your feelings about reaching this juncture in the program where you have those two vehicles side by side. Mike, too, if you'd like.
To lose our launch director to the Ares 1X program, so I'll let him talk to you.
Well, I get to play, I get to support the Ares 1X test flight, and as we get ready, and we've got some team of folks, a lot of the members of the KSC team are working with the other centers and the other contractor support folks to ready that vehicle for its launch, hopefully sometime in the next several weeks, including our integrated testing and power-up testing that should be coming online here sometime in the next week or so. So yeah, there is a balanced excitement. We're trying to continue to get that processing and preparations ready to go, while at the same time continue to keep the processing flow for the shuttle fleet going as well. So it will be interesting and intriguing as we try to continue to make them both balance at the same time, and certainly we fully expect to be able to make everything fit schedule and operations wise. So it's exciting on both ends.
Rory O'Neill with Westwood One Radio. I'm just wondering, to follow up on Todd's question, what's from a management standpoint, and the Augustine Commission, what's the sentiment? What are you getting? What's the feeling you're getting from the employees about the report? What's the level of anxiety? Are they thinking that maybe they'll get another year, 2 years of work out of this? How much are the employees worried about it and paying attention to the date when it's going to be delivered?
Well, it's hard to judge, and I think it's hard to generalize for all our employees because it affects the employees differently. You know, it affects them differently whether you're in a production team like the external tanks, where that's actually started ramping down. You know, we've had some layoffs in those areas. We've cut back of some of our production facilities in the tanks because we've essentially built the tanks and they're completed. Some other areas, like down here in Florida, as we know, we're getting in a very busy launch season with the remaining 6 flights to go, and so there's a lot of processing. You know, as Pete was saying, we have the Ares 1-X work down here, so there's a lot of excitement, a lot of work down here. So it's not, they're pretty focused on their work down here. It's also a function of where you kind of sit in your career. You know, if you're kind of older in your career, you kind of want to maybe hang around till the end and see the last shuttle flight, and there's not any anxiety with that at all. That just fits naturally. If you're very young in your career, this is an unbelievably exciting time. You get a chance to do some really neat stuff with an amazing vehicle that is phenomenal, that can, lands like an airplane, can return tremendous cargo from space, is just a phenomenal vehicle. So you get a chance early in your career to actually be part of the team that flies and operates that. So there can't be a better time in your career. And if you're kind of in that middle career age, then that's where it's a little tougher. You know, you got to talk to your family. You got to figure out what you need to do to keep your family healthy, and to keep kids in school, and to do the real things that you need to do with your life. So then the career has to maybe sit a little bit differently than your family. So I think it's very tough to generalize in general about what the workforce feels about this. I think the workforce in general really likes the business we're in. They like challenges. They like tasks that are difficult. They like rising to the occasion. They like spending multiple years working on something and getting it to see it go fly. You know, I just did the flight readiness review for the Japanese HTV vehicle, and it's been in work for probably 12 years. And I don't know how many people told me during the review that they are so excited to finally see this get this close to flight that they are just ecstatic. So it's decades of work that you dedicate to this lofty goal that you can't accomplish by yourself. You can only accomplish it working with this team. And then when you get to see it fly, that exhilaration is pretty strong. So that's a real motivator for our workforce. They really like that. They like this business. I think it's clear from Augustine we're still going to get to stay in this business. We're still going to get to do this stuff. Exactly how it comes about and exactly how it works out, we don't know yet. But I'm confident we'll figure out a way to put it together. This team doesn't quit. NASA keeps moving forward. This country keeps moving forward. We'll figure out a way to pull all this together, and there'll be some exciting times in front of us. So we need to enjoy what we've got now. Don't be too worried about the future. Take what things you need to do for your family, but stay focused on what you're doing and really enjoy these times. This is a unique time. The tempo of spaceflight, the assembly activities on station are really unprecedented. I mean, we're at the big change where we go from kind of assembly of station to research, so we can actually start seeing the research activities start occurring on station. So this is a great time. So the workforce may be somewhat concerned depending on where they sit, but I think in general, if you just knuckle down a little bit and look a little bit, this is a pretty awesome time, and you need to really appreciate what's going
on. Chris Gebhardt with NASAspaceflight.com again. There had been talk earlier about installing a camera on the flight deck at the pilot's window to look at the liquid oxygen ice frost ramps. Was that this flight or 129 or just engineering talk? Or we would like to see some.
Yeah, we're looking at that as an option to try to get some better imagery on the liquid oxygen tank ice frost ramps, which sit up on the front end of the vehicle. Most of our cameras are either on the the ET feed line focused on the inner tank or down below on the LH2 tank or on the SRBs, which then fall away. So yeah, we are looking at that. I think we do have a preliminary plan that works pretty good, and 129 is a potential target, but it's going to go through the standard certification process and check to make sure it's really what we do. We don't want to just go put it in there if the data is not going to be worth getting. So, but the teams are working towards that goal.
Hi, I'm Alcia Acevedo with El Sentinel. I am wondering, when will we hear from the astronauts? Are they, will they be giving any conferences?
Yeah, they have a press conference schedule. I don't know it, but the PAO guys will have it. And so there is a set of press conferences where they will be talking to the ground.
Jay Barbary again. Gerst, I was speaking to the review board today, and they said they were going to have turnover to the White House on Tuesday the 1st. They were on schedule to do that, but there wouldn't be a report coming out until mid-September or late. Now, what you were saying a while ago, have you been told you're not going to get this report to look at, you and Charlie, until past the 1st? You're expecting it later, like the 15th?
I don't know the details. I've heard that we may get bits and pieces as it comes through the month, but we're not going to get the total report as we once thought as a finished product at the beginning of the month. So I think we may, I don't know the exact schedule, but we may get bits and pieces, but the final report probably comes towards the middle of the month to a little bit later in September.
And how long do you think you will be, with your recommendation, going to the president? How much time do you think you'll be taking?
I don't know. We've started to put together some preliminary plans. We're starting to think of some things now. It's probably, I don't know, we probably will start as soon as we get the report. The report is actually delivered to the Office of Science, Technology, Policy and to the NASA administrator at the same time. So that's kind of the administrative wing gets it at the same time NASA gets it. So we'll start some dialogue immediately as soon as we get it about what kind of things we see in it, which way we want to go and things. So then that process will take some amount of time to go ahead and put the negotiations together of what the actual planning is. So it's probably nothing very quick. It's probably a couple of months to figure out exactly what we want to go do and what we want to go change. And again, I think the important thing is we're really setting a path for the future. We've got a chance to go back and review things. The current path we're on, do we want to change a little bit? How much do we want to change? And we really want to do that right. So I think we want to take as much time as it takes for us to really get a good sound foundation together and get a good sound understanding together before we go kind of embark on something dramatically different.
So no earlier than really the end of September.
Yeah, clearly I wouldn't think we would hear anything till the end of September.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one more question here at Kennedy. James D in the back.
Sorry. Mr. Gerstenmaier, how important is a successful HTV flight next month? Can you just put that in context? If something doesn't go right, what does it mean for the station long term? What are the next steps? Yeah.
I think it's very important for us. I think it does a couple things for us. First of all, it's going to be the first time we've had the active vehicle fly up to the vehicle that actually captures it. So it's a little different. You know, every time we've done a rendezvous before, the active vehicle has been the shuttle, and then it flies up to essentially a passive vehicle and captures it. This is the first time the active vehicle flies up and then stops, and it has to position a grapple fixture in a 1 meter by 1 meter box, and then the SSRMS reaches out and then grabs the HTV. That same technique will be used with the commercial cargo carriers. That same technique will be used with the SpaceX vehicle and with the orbital vehicle. So this technique is important not only for HTV, but it is for our future cargo resupply. So we need to make sure that this technique and this process is all validated and works out. This is also pretty demanding in the fact that this is the first flight of the H-2B. This is a dual-engine rocket for Japan, and this is our first launch of a dual-engine rocket. So this is exciting for them. This is a brand new launcher that it sits on. It also carries some very nice science. It carries some ozone measuring equipment that will get stuck out on the external pallet of the Japanese module. It also carries a multispectral imager that sits out there to look at some things. So it's exciting from that standpoint. It's also going to demonstrate our cargo capability. It demonstrates those future things. It's not easy. The teams are really prepared. You know, we had very little open paperwork at this point for this complex of vehicle. They've done a lot of checkout. There's still a lot of checkout to go with the arm. There's still some, and there's another GPS demo that has to occur. There's 2 more flight readiness reviews in Japan, one for the rockets itself and then one for the HTV that lead up to the launch. So I think it's very important to us in terms of the future. I think the teams are prepared. We'll see what we get out of it. You know, there's no guarantee in our business, but they're prepared and we're ready. If we have some problem, we'll be able to recover from that. But the techniques and the processes that we're laying in place are going to have to be proven to keep station viable in the future. So if we don't succeed this time for whatever reason, we've got another way to go do it. And I'm confident the teams have done everything possible to get ready to go make this successful. So it's very important to us from a learning standpoint, from a practicing standpoint, and from a future standpoint.
Thank you, and that will conclude today's news conference, or this morning's news conference. For more information on the STS-127 mission, please visit us on the web at www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thank you for joining us.
Feels like it's 2 in the morning.
It is, isn't it?